Okay, thank you. Greetings to the Chair, the Vice Chair, trustees, staff, and friends. It's my honor to speak to you tonight on behalf of the Friends of NDSS and our many supporters within Niagara-on-the-Lake. I also wish for this board to become familiar with some of the families, friends, neighbors we speak on behalf of, many of whom are in photos which are going to be presented within this slideshow tonight. They've entered some short personal statements on some of these photos, many of which will play during my comments. It's been compiled by local parent Marion Dunn, and we're grateful for her efforts. Tonight, we are assembled here as a stronger, smarter, and more determined group than ever before. We continue to believe that Niagara-on-the-Lake is a home for a viable high school. As the Friends of NDSS, we have taken 10 years to build our case for exceptional community education. We know our cause is reasonable and our aims achievable. Providing public education is not an easy job. As the son of two teachers who formerly taught for this board, let me be very clear. We have respect for the responsibility you've been granted to educate our children. Declining enrollment is clearly a reality in Ontario. If you were to ignore this reality, it would not be serving our children well. Children including those you see on the screen tonight. And these are the children and the families that you serve. And as these children's parents, grandparents, and neighbors, we cannot be clearer when we tell you that you will be making a mistake if you make the choice to close our local high school. And that's what it boils down to, choice. While some trustees will argue they are providing the choice that parents demand and that students need, the fact is that the unique alternative programming choices this board has provided have been unparalleled in Ontario, and the courtesy busing to provide these choices unprecedented and in many ways, some would argue, improper. Our local high school is important to our town. So say our children, parents, neighbors, and business owners. Our elected local government says it's important, and our provincial government reiterates its support for schools at the heart of our communities. And yet, here we are, pleading with this board to place a value on community-based secondary education. Why? Because at the end of the day, there is no provincially mandated mechanism that requires you do anything other than consider the value of our school to our community. As a result, you make the choice to disregard the wishes of our town articulated through your ARC process as you strive for ways to balance your budgets and eliminate excess capacity within your facilities. This board exists, distinct from the DSBN, to act as the voice of the people. You are elected and entrusted with the tools and resources available to ensure education is nurtured and celebrated in our communities. Money should not and does not dictate outcomes. People, planning, and priorities should. We need vision and leadership, and in the absence of both, we muddled through two ARC processes in the last 10 years, and with all due respect, numerous board meetings trying to define exactly how we proceed at this juncture in our community's history. We have simply been reacting. We are missing a vision for public education in Niagara-on-the-Lake. In the absence of such a vision, we in the Friends of NDSS have adopted several positions regarding education in our town, things that we believe will lead to success. Success not for this board or for the Friends of NDSS, but for our children, including over 700 secondary school-age children in our community, and their children, and their children, and their children. Without going into detail, the history of Niagara-on-the-Lake has, since our earliest generations, included a strong local school system with a commitment to local education. This has defined our community in many ways, with multi-generational businesses and agricultural operations having families with close ties to NDSS and to our community, both politically and socially. Schools are a reflection of their communities and play a role in the social and civil education of our youth. Without access to this unifying institution, our children will grow up in isolation of each other, tied to a social and educational system where they are, literally, satellite citizens. They will hitch round-trip rides on a yellow Comet that will transport them from their points of origin to their day school experience with no chance for extracurriculars. Little or no interaction will exist between these worlds, and the strong social and civil education that characterized the Niagara-on-the-Lake NDSS education will be lost forever. In contrast, the elimination of 1 or 2 of the 7 secondary schools in St. Catharines would not result in such isolation and would have far less impact on student experience and student success. Please recognize there are other options for consolidating school facilities in our region. We cannot and will not accept the DSBN's political and policy-driven isolation of NDSS. We have over 700 secondary school-age children in our community. We have independent demographic reports indicating modest growth within our school-age population. And we are also beginning to see the genesis of collaborative community dialogue related to the provision of education within our community. Beautiful letters, new voices, new leaders, unparalleled community involvement, and civilized discussion. But now, we really cannot ignore that we face your enrollment target deadline of 350 by this Friday, which will most certainly not be met. This is a goal we were not involved in setting, and a goal that was not tackled with truly collaborative efforts. This metric was unachievable from the start given the lack of tools, human resources, and time to achieve the task. The metric was also unachievable in light of one of the alternative programs we were, in theory, to have attracted enrollment from. I'm referring, of course, to Eden High School. I have to say that it continues to insult our membership that this board not only created this unusual dynamic with Eden, but has also refused to acknowledge its negative impact on our community high school. Eden High School clearly appeals to many within our community. We wish to celebrate this fact as well, but can't help but be puzzled and wondered why this success story within Niagara-on-the-Lake origins was never conceived within a home just 200 meters from its founding. This is a question that has never received a proper answer from anyone, despite the fact that many people sitting within this room at this board table claim to have one. I can't rationalize today why our communities were ever separated. Despite the fact it may not be popular for me to do so, I want to recognize that Trustee Dalton Clark did remark last year in June his belief that this enrollment target merely takes the pressure off this board to be the bad guys. I'm paraphrasing, but I believe that was the essence of his comment, and it's hard not to agree with him. And yet we worked together over this past year, and some worked harder than others. And our town bonded together in a unique and somewhat frantic effort to attempt to address this monumental task, despite no particular skills or aptitudes to achieve this goal. And despite the precarious position we are in today, treading water with our enrollment numbers, we in the Friends of NDSS could not be prouder of our community for the efforts it has made, and more steadfastly, we are resolved to pursue this issue to its rightful conclusion. Tonight, I have to admit I'm somewhat of a reluctant speaker. Many people within our community and within the Friends of NDSS wish to speak up at this moment, but there is no clear consensus on what to say. We have said a lot over the past several years, and we stand by it all. And despite the fact that Trustee Clark was right about the target, this past year has given us some time to reflect as a community. It is now clearer than ever to us that this board has not only strangled the school through policy, busing, and disrepair over the past 20 years, but it has also worked counterproductively in joint efforts related to several initiatives aimed at increasing our enrollment. And despite the strong feelings associated with our membership right now, we recognize that this is not the time for venom. This is a moment for contemplation and reflection by this board. Tonight, we appeal to all trustees, and specifically those in more isolated communities, to consider the implications of losing your local high school, particularly if you're aware there are reasonable opportunities to keep them operational. Furthermore, we ask trustees from our larger centers to reflect upon your responsibility as our larger regional partners to ensure respectful and dynamic relationships with your smaller regional neighbors. Our cause is just, and our spirit is stronger than ever. It is hard to deny our passion for this school.